What's up, guys? I know y'all love a good jig bite. Today we're going to talk about the ultimate jig rod, the best of the best, the three best options at three different price points. Throwing a little target casting to isolated cover. We're talking isolated wood, holes in the grass, grass edges, big boulders, whatever. We're pitching jigs, casting jigs to specific targets, not talking about heavy cover jigs. We're not talking about ledge fishing. We're talking about throwing a 3/8 half ounce kind of flipping jig, you know, poison tail jig, any of that type of stuff, and just getting to lay the wood to them. So I got three rods in my hand. We got them decked out with reels. Gonna try to get you some shots of the bend profiles of these rods, what they look like when they load up with a cast, with a little pitch, with a little flip, just a little bit of everything. So, Ultimate Rod Series, we have three different price points that we're gonna hit. The under 150, the under 300, and the I don't care what it costs, just give me the best. Those are what I have in my hand. And first we're gonna go over what we want in a jig rod. So what I want in a jig rod is I want something over 7 foot. 7.2 to 7.4 is absolute perfection to me. If it's a little bit longer than that, cool. If it's a little bit shorter than that, that's fine too. Personal preference from that point, but that gives you a good baseline to go off of. Beyond that, for this particular jig application, I'm gonna lean towards something, and kind of everybody at the shop is gonna lean toward recommending something that is in a medium heavy range. So I think if there's one mistake that I see people make when buying a jig rod for this type of jig application, they try to go a little bit too heavy. And a lot of times that works and that's fine. But what you will find is if you get something that's not quite as stiff, if you don't just try to bully your way through it, you'll end up with more accurate presentations, which is probably the biggest benefit that you'll get from a softer rod. You'll notice no difference in hookup ratios, but you will notice that you land more fish. And that's because when you use a stiffer rod, especially if you have a thicker gauge hook on whatever jig you're fishing, you are increasing the potential that you're gonna blow a hole in that fish's mouth. And when that happens, bad things happen as far as the fish coming unglued. So we want to make as little of a indentation into that fish's mouth as possible to get the job done, which is why I recommend not using a super thick gauge hook. Obviously there are circumstances where that is not feasible, but when you can, the thinner gauge hook, the better off you are. A medium heavy rod is going to give you plenty of power, but it's gonna give you enough tip that you'll be more accurate. You're gonna be able to bring that bait over cover in a more fish catching manner, which is not just the rigid, you know, powering through it. It'll kind of allow that to kind of hang on whatever you're trying to bring it over the top of, and that way it keeps it in the strike zone longer. So that's why we want a medium heavy rod, not going something that's crazy heavy. I will tell you that there are heavy action rods that feel like medium heavies. This is kind of a constant theme among all of these videos, that there is not an exact standard set of criteria that determines a medium or a medium heavy, medium heavy or a heavy. So there's a lot of interpretation for the manufacturer depending on what specs they want to use. So a heavy could be fine, but that could be, you know, a heavy that is really like on the fringe between a medium heavy and a heavy. So you really just need to ideally put the rods in your hands, or, you know, call some experts like those guys at American Legacy, pick their brain a little bit, see what they think, and go from there. So selling put to the side, we're gonna go through and talk about these three rods. So the first one I have is the under 150 price point, and we went low on this one. We went value route, $99.99. It's the Arc Cobb series, and we've actually got the Buzz Burner rod here, which is a 7.1 heavy. So I mentioned some heavies are okay. This one feels excellent. It feels like just a heavier medium heavy or a light heavy, one of the two. Has a great bend profile to it. Has a little bit of tip, and then a really nice, strong, solid backbone, which is obviously what we're looking for a jig. A good rod that has plenty of power, but a smooth transition from the tip into that backbone. You don't want something that is super aggressive in that transition. You want it to still be smooth all the way through, and that's just a general best practices for selecting a rod anyway. But this rod fits that criteria. It's 7.4, so it's in the ideal length category. Has a really nice length butt section. Has a nice lightweight feel to it. Balance becomes fairly important with a jig since you have your rod up in the air most of the time. We've got Shimano Metanium on here right now, which is a very expensive reel to have on a $99 rod, but it's just what we had available, so we threw it on there. And with that reel, it feels absolutely fantastic. If you threw something like a Corrado on there, or an SLX, it's going to feel really good too. It's just a well-balanced rod, especially that's hard to find in a $100 rod, and this does it very well. So no hesitation in considering this to be the premium jig rod under $150. These arc rods are cranking out some really nice product, so definitely give them a look. And this Cobb series, I don't like this handle, I'll just be honest with you. Aesthetically, it functions just fine. It's personal preference. Some people are going to like it, I don't, but I don't really care. It's fine. So that takes care of that. Moving on to the under 300 tier is this one. There's a lot of good options here, and I mean a lot of really good options. Shimano X-Pride 7'2" medium heavy, honorable mention, excellent rod. You could use a 7'2" heavy if you want. Just those two rods from Shimano in the X-Pride series are fantastic. If you want to drop down to a Zodius 7'2" medium heavy, you could do that. Plenty of choices here. But to me, the creme de la creme, the winner, is the Dobyns Champion XP DC 735C. And I have the full handle model here. It doesn't matter. Whatever your personal preference is A-okay. I like the full handle. It's a little bit old school. Just feels good to me. I don't like having that gap when I'm setting the hook with the jig. So if I'm given the option of a full handle, I will take it, but I don't have to have it. It's neither here nor there. So this rod's 7'3". It's a medium heavy. It's got a really, really nice tip and a load of backbone. So this rod is one of those that has that unique combination of that soft tip, but then a pretty thick diameter blank. And it's just really hard to achieve that without the rod kind of being clunky. And Dobyns has managed to do it with this particular model. And it's not like this is some new, hot rod that's been out or that just came out and it's taken the world. This model's been around for a long time. Most Dobyns fans know about it or have owned this rod, but if you haven't, this is an absolute staple in the Dobyns lineup, and it should be in fishing rod lineups in general, regardless of your brand preferences, because it's just an outstanding rod. Comes in at $259.99, just an excellent rod, a lot of sensitivity, fantastic balance point, lightweight, checks every single box you could possibly want from a good jig rod. And this 735 is just money. I highly recommend that one. So that leaves the I don't care what it costs price point. And I was really excited for this because I get to feature a rod that is one of my favorite things, and it's when manufacturers mislabel rods, and therefore it kind of puts them in a bucket that, in my opinion, in our opinion, they don't belong in, and it's fun to be able to highlight the uses of those. So that rod that we're going with today is the G Loomis NRX Plus 873C CRR, which is designated as a Carolina rig rod. And if you want to throw a Carolina rig rod or throw a Carolina rig, it does a great job. Up to 1/2 ounce, 5/8 of an ounce. You can even do a 3/4 ounce, but it's starting to push it at that point. But where it really excels to me is in this exact presentation we're talking about. A really, really good jig rod, a really good 3/8 ounce jig rod. You want to go up to a 1/2, go for it. It's going to do a great job with that. This rod just has a tremendous number of applications in that kind of shallow water, light flipping, jig. If you want to throw a little compact flipping bait, if you want to flip a tube, any of that type of stuff at isolated cover, it's just tremendous. It's one of the best selling rods that we have in the NRX Plus. Obviously a premium quality offering here. So there's $650. It's very, very expensive rod. Obviously we understand that, but you got made in the USA, limited lifetime warranty, and the sensitivity on these rods is just unfreaking believable. I mean, you can feel every little rock, every little twig, every little bump from a fish. The NRX Pluses are just incredible when it comes to that. So when you need sensitivity, and I think in a jig bite, you have certain conditions where they just barely pick that jig up, You want the sensitivity, but even more so, you just want to feel what your jig's doing down there, what it's touching, what it's crawling over the top of. If you're in the sweet spot, if you're not in the sweet spot, you want to feel every single bit of that. And so I think if we're going to spend this much money on a rod, this application makes a lot of sense. And this rod is very lightweight. The tip is fantastic. It's got plenty of backbone. It's just, they absolutely nailed it with this. So this will not come as a surprise to a lot of people that I have talked to over the years. I've recommended this rod I don't know how many times, and it seems to be an incredibly popular, you know, it gets incredibly good feedback, I should say, whenever guys decide to pull the trigger on it. So awesome jig rod, 873 NRX Plus. Definitely, if you're looking for a very high-end rod and need a good jig rod, this is the rod right here. Anyway, that's what we got for today's video, the ultimate jig rod. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We're having fun doing these. If you have a recommendation for what you want us to do on the next presentation for the Ultimate Rod series, let us know in the comments below. Give us a like, give us a subscribe, tell us what you want us to do. We're going to keep cranking them out, and hopefully we'll see you guys on the water and see you guys in the showroom and on the website. Thanks, guys.